I'm on a work trip again, just hanging out here in my hotel room, and I wanted to make a video real quick about evidences that point towards the truthfulness and the validity of the Book of Mormon. A lot of people know that in the LDS faith, we believe and study from the Book of Mormon as a book of scripture. We use that alongside of the Bible, and it's something that we believe was written by ancient prophets who lived here in the American continent from about 600 BC to 400 AD. And that they recorded these revelations and these different things that happened, and that they recorded them on metallic plates, and that Joseph Smith in the 1800s, when he was called to restore the Church of Jesus Christ on the earth, he was led to this ancient record from these prophets, and that he translated it through the power of God, and that's where we get the Book of Mormon. It's called the Book of Mormon because the prophet who compiled all of these books, his name was Mormon. And so the story of the Book of Mormon and how it came forth is something that's very hard for people to believe, especially outside of our church. And that's something that I completely understand. The whole story of how it came forth is a tough pill for some people to swallow. So I wanted to make a video about some of the evidences, the scientific, physical evidences that point towards the Book of Mormon and make a very compelling case that the Book of Mormon is what it says to be, an ancient record of Scripture. First off, I want to get out of the way that in any religion, ultimately some form of faith is required. There's no way to 100% prove that the Book of Mormon is true. There's also no way to 100% prove that the Bible is true and the things that happened in the Bible really actually took place. There's a lot of evidences that you can point to, but in the end, there's no way to prove these things. Whatever religion you're in, you have to have some faith, ultimately. However, I think that physical evidences, help cultivate some ground where faith can grow. And that's definitely the case for me with the Book of Mormon. So I'm going to go through and list some of these physical evidences, and I'm going to post some links down on this video that you can click on if you want to learn more about some of these things. So I'm just going to go through these. So first off, the whole idea of writing on metal plates. So that was something that when Joseph Smith in the early 1800s claimed to have gotten this record of metal plates and translated the Book of Mormon from it, that's something that was laughable. That nobody had ever heard of that idea of writing on metallic plates. Since Joseph Smith's time, there have been archaeological discoveries that have shown that this was actually a very common practice. Different records that are written on metallic plates have been discovered, and it's been proven that it was a well-established practice that people would do when they wanted something to last for a long period of time, last longer than something that was written on paper, because obviously paper documents only last so long. So that's something that Joseph Smith couldn't have known about at the time, and like I said, he was mocked for that idea. Another thing was cement structures. The Book of Mormon talks throughout the book about the ancient inhabitants of America building cement structures. At the time, that was not known about. But since Joseph Smith's time, there have been discoveries, like I said, with the golden plates. The same thing with cement structures. There have been discoveries that show that ancient inhabitants of America did, in fact, use cement to build structures. Another thing is olive tree cultivation. There's a chapter in the Book of Mormon that talks extensively about the way that you raise, grow, graft trees, and cultivate olive trees. And experts have gone through and said that, yes, this is very accurately how it's done. So Joseph Smith, he was born in New York. He had a third grade level education. He had never worked with olive trees. He had never been taught how to work with olive trees. And there's just no way that he could have known all of these intricate details about the cultivation of olive trees. Yet it's found in the Book of Mormon, which to me points towards the fact that it was actually written by someone who knew about olive trees. And we believe that it was written by an ancient prophet who was familiar with that because he had roots in the Middle East. And so, which, obviously we know in the Middle East, olive tree cultivation is a common practice. So that's another thing. Another thing that I'll talk briefly about, it's kind of hard to explain, so I'll post a link about it, is the Hebraic form of writing, which is called chiasmus. So we believe that the Book of Mormon was originally written in an ancient form of Hebrew and Reformed Egyptian. And Joseph Smith, through the power of God, translated it from that language to English. And so chiasmus is very common in Hebraic writing. It's a form of poetry. And it basically, I'll just explain it briefly, it's where you start with one idea, move to the middle, repeat the middle, and then end with the idea you started on. So an example would be, Old King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was he. So you start with Old King Cole, move to merry old soul, repeat merry old soul, and then end with the subject, Old King Cole. And so that's something that in Hebrew is very common. You'll look at chapters where they'll start with one thing, move to the middle, move out the opposite way they came, and end on what they started with. That form of writing is found throughout the Book of Mormon in multiple places, whether it's clusters of verses or whole chapters, or sometimes even entire books of scripture in the Book of Mormon. Chiasmus is just very common. Experts have gone through and said there's no way that this is a coincidence. Multiple times chiasmus is found. So either it was written, the Book of Mormon was written by someone who made it up, who knew a lot about the Hebraic form of writing, or it was written by these prophets who wrote and spoke in Hebrew and Reformed Egyptian. Joseph Smith, of course, there's no way that he could have known about that Hebraic form of writing with his limited education, the young age. He was around 20 when he translated the Book of Mormon. There's just no way that he could have known about it. And this is a good time for me to say that I am absolutely 100% convinced that Joseph Smith didn't make up the Book of Mormon. And a lot of people who try to disprove the Book of Mormon have conceded that fact as well. There's no way that he could have done it. So what a lot of people have said is that, okay, someone else made it up and used Joseph Smith as a mouthpiece, as a spokesperson. To me, that idea is just very hard to believe, and I'll tell you why. Joseph Smith developed such a following. He developed this church. People were following him. You could say he gained this fame or notoriety. So if that happened, why didn't this person who actually made it up come forth? Why didn't someone come forth and try to capitalize on that? A lot of people have identified a select few people who would have had the knowledge or the education to even have tried to write what the Book of Mormon is. And when you look at each one of these people, they never came forth, never claimed anything. They had very limited interaction with Joseph Smith. It's just highly unlikely to me. So I think that's something that's very interesting to consider. So there's no way that Joseph Smith could have written it. It's hard for me to believe that someone else wrote it and used him because they never came forth. Joseph Smith, in his private and public conversations, never told anyone that he had written it or that someone else had given it to him. Even the closest family members, his wife, his parents, siblings, he never told anyone anything that would hint towards the idea that he made it up or that someone else made it up and gave it to him. So that's something that's interesting to me. So I'll just list a few more of these evidences. There's a lot more, but I don't want to take up too much time. One that a lot of people don't know about outside of the church is that there are actually 11 witnesses who were allowed to see and feel and touch the metal plates that Joseph Smith was given and that he translated the Book of Mormon from. These people wrote down their testimonials. They were allowed, like I said, to touch it, to go through it, to study it. It's interesting to me that some of these people actually ended up leaving the church. They became disaffected or offended by something that was said, and they ended up leaving the church. But even those people who leave the church never denied having seen the metallic plates, the golden plates, as we call them, because the metal that the Book of Mormon was written on was a golden material. And so that's why you'll oftentimes hear it referred to as the golden plates. But even these people who left the church to their deathbed were challenged, and they always admitted, even up till the time that they died, that yes, they had seen these plates. There was something there. Obviously, that's not 100% proof that the Book of Mormon is true. Someone could always make up some plates, but when you take all of these evidences and you put them together, it's like a lot of small sticks being put together. It's hard to break. It makes a very compelling case for the Book of Mormon. Another thing is the study of word prints. So word prints are very interesting to me. So just like we each have our own unique set of fingerprints, we each have a very unique word print. So what a word print is when you look at something that someone has written, whether it's a book or documents or a report or they've written in their journal or something, we each have a very unique word print. It's in the way that we conjugate verbs and the way that we form sentences. And when you study someone's writing, experts can really identify their word print. This is something that's been used in the FBI and the CIA to identify criminals who left notes behind at crime scenes, and they'll take that and they'll study the word print, compare it with other things that the suspected criminal has written, and that's one way that they will prove that the criminal committed the crime. So experts went through the Book of Mormon, they read through it, they read through Joseph Smith's writings, his personal writings, and they compared the word prints. As you might have guessed, they don't match. Joseph Smith's word prints are found nowhere in the Book of Mormon. And in fact, they went through and studied the word prints of the various prophets throughout the Book of Mormon and found unique word prints that don't match each other. So that's something that's very interesting to me. There's a few more forms of Hebraic writing that is found throughout the Book of Mormon. I just wanted to give a brief example. It's things that when you say it in English, it sounds kind of funny to us, but when you say it in Hebrew, it's very common. So just one brief example is in the book of 1 Nephi, chapter 13. It's on page 24 of the Book of Mormon. It's a verse, and this is Nephi, the prophet Nephi, recording a vision that he had. It says, "And I also saw gold and silver and silks and scarlets and fine twined linen and all manner of precious clothing." That sounds very weird to us to put an "and" in between each noun. But in Hebrew, that is the acceptable form of doing it, and that's how it's done. You put an "and" in between each noun. We in English would just, and in the 1800s would just say, "And I also saw gold, silver, silks, scarlets, and fine twined linen." But there's an "and" in between each one, and that's very consistent with Hebrew. Would Joseph Smith have known that? Absolutely not. So again, that's another evidence that points towards the validity. So these are just a few things. Another one that I think is very significant is the fact that Joseph Smith died, like I said, having never told anyone that it was a fake. And even in the last hours of his death, he and his brother quoted verses from the Book of Mormon for comfort. They both felt that they were going to die soon. They had some knowledge that people were going to come and try to kill them, and they needed comfort, and they quoted verses from the Book of Mormon for comfort to each other. I think that's interesting. If you were about to die, would you quote from something that you had made up or that you knew was false for comfort? I don't think so. And till the very end, he always maintained that he believed that the Book of Mormon was true. And he stuck to his story that it had been given to him by God and that through the power of God, he had translated it. So these are just a few things that I think are very important. Like I said, you can't 100% prove that the Book of Mormon is true. It ultimately comes down to faith. You need to read through the Book of Mormon like you would with the Bible or with anything else. And you need to pay attention to your feelings, and then you need to pray and ask for God's Spirit to help confirm to you that it's true. I've done that. I know that it's true. There's another evidence for me is there's been so many times where I've been going through the Book of Mormon, and I've been reading it, and I've thought, that principle that I just read is so deep and so profound and so life-changing for me that there's no way that a man could have just written it, especially a man who's intending to deceive. It would have to be written by someone who's inspired by God, and it's divinely inspired. So if you've never gone through the Book of Mormon, I would encourage you to pick it up, to read through it with an open mind, and just see how it can bless your life, because it's really blessed mine. I hope that's interesting or helpful to some people. If you have any comments, please leave them below. Thanks.